What's up, guys? Welcome back to the episode of the Aliens Podcast. Today we have Patrick and Anne Furrow. Patrick and Anne Furrow own Step by Stage Interiors. They are one of the largest staging companies in the area. We're in Orange, Tampa Bay, Polk County area. They're from my hometown of Lakeland, and I've been in the business for about a decade. You have seen their presence so heavily. They've been doing this for about 12 years. I've actually had the pleasure of shooting in several of their designs, and it's just absolutely incredible attention to detail. And a staged home just looks so much better when you walk in, especially from us being on the shooting side of it. When we're photographing and videoing properties, it is always a huge advantage to have the combination of high quality media with a staged home. So today we're going to look to get some insight on staging, how they built their business, and how much staging can help in the real estate business. Guys, happy to have you.
Thanks, Tony. We appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So first of all, we have 3 guests on the show today. So can we see the little lap puppy real quick before everyone starts seeing her wiggle?
Oh yes, Miss Olive here.
They've got Olive, their child, on, which is cute.
Yes.
So yeah, when we're talking about staging homes, right? So my media business, we've been shooting for a long time. We've shot everything from the extreme luxury to $22 million properties, and our bread and butter is a single families under $500,000. So it's a little bit of everything. Staging can benefit either of these properties. And that's what we've seen. Like it seems that some agents will stage any property. That's how they operate. They know that is their brand. And we'll go into a home that's listed for $250,000. It's not not going to be a huge profitable home, but they'll still have incredible staging in. It makes our job so much better. What does staging really do? Like, let's zoom all the way out. And for people that may not know, hope everyone does. Staging is when you decorate and put furniture and decor and a vibe in a home, an atmosphere in a home to show you what the potential is inside this home. Mm-hmm. But what does staging really do for real estate?
So I feel like people buy lifestyles, not just a house or a box, right? So
right.
When you're a buyer and you're walking into a property, you're really looking for that energy or what's going to, speak to you. And if you can show that lifestyle, it really helps that buyer understand how they can live in the space. So it's not necessarily all about decorating. A lot of people think that staging is decorating, but it's really trying to market that property to the widest range of buyers to get them to understand how they can connect with the space.
That's right. And you would always say every house has its own heartbeat. Mm-hmm. So it's important for that particular property to tell its own story to the prospective buying public. We're marketing for the masses. We're professional home marketers. We're making sure that we're elevating a listing that's giving a competitive marketing advantage in a saturated real estate market with listings everywhere. So what is going to differentiate our clients and our agents' properties in a 5-mile radius at the same price point, why everyone wants to see that house and make the offers on that one versus everything else on the market in competition.
And Tony, too, like a lot of houses look beautiful online when they're staged and professionally photographed. So I think it pairs very well together, because if a house is professionally photographed, but it's vacant, you still have no idea how to use that room, what size that room is. And so furniture and design really helps determine and give people an idea of what that space is utilized for online to drive that traffic out to the property.
We always like to say, if you can't see it, it's hard to sell it. So if something is, bland or boring or barren or just soulless on the inside, a lot of people being visual, they can't figure out how to mentally move into a space. They just kind of lose that, taste for wanting to make an offer on that property.
Yeah, it's the vision, right? Something like, that I always explain with like when a vibe is curated, when the atmosphere of a house just feels so good, that's how like a lot of like hotel lobbies are meant to feel. And you guys all know, like we've all traveled before, right? When you travel, most of traveling, unless you're only doing Airbnbs, you're going to be staying in places that are carefully curated to make you feel a certain way. And most time when you're on vacation, they want you to feel at home, welcome, luxurious. So like obviously living over here in St. Pete Beach, there's a lot of resorts and I'm in and out of lobbies all the time. And you realize that. And then I started to notice, I'm like, that is what these homes feel like, where you can walk into, and obviously we just had a house like this where the house was exquisite, beautiful new construction, $1 million property. However, we were shooting this house with all of the current homeowners' furniture and decor, and they just were not up to date with how it was decorated. And I remember feeling
and it almost dates the house.
I remember thinking, man, it is going to do them such a disservice to have this weird artwork and this like weird furniture and like this china cabinets and everything compared to how this house could look if they would have just taken a week and staged it. And it really does change. And it's like, we just, not everyone has the eye. That's why there's a whole career of interior designing and staging, because the people who have the eye and they do it well, it completely changes how you feel inside of a home,
Oh, absolutely.
Very much so.
Yeah, for real. So when you guys get a call to stage a property, like what are some of the main reasons then? Do you feel that it's a lot of like, I'm sure it's a lot of repeat business, but how, I guess the real question is, how often is it that someone comes into staging for their first time to use a staging company? And like,
Quite
how does
often.
that process go?
It happens all the time, every day. I mean, I would say, a good portion of our business, like, most great companies, is referral based, but we get a lot of business that comes through traffic from, online searches from Google and, social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc. So a lot of times people, for the first time, whether it's an agent or it's a home seller, they're not quite sure the entire process. So they ask questions, they're inquisitive, they want to know. Our consultative process is super simple. It answers a lot of questions, whether that's in person at the property with the agent and or the seller, or over the phone, because a lot of times our home sellers have moving out of state or they're no longer living in town. They can't meet with us. So we do a lot of business over the phone and via electronic communication. But the common question that we get from majority of our clients, agents and sellers, is how much usually the investment at the stage, and then what kind of return on investment we're going to get. So we're able to answer all those questions with our clients so they can kind of get a good feel for why this is such a great benefit to do to help my house sell for the most money and as fast as possible, versus what we always like to say is rolling the dice in the real estate casino and then hoping you come up lucky sevens. And a lot of times, especially in the current market, sellers come up craps, and then they're looking for a new strategy after 30 or 40 or 60 days, and they're $10,000-$20,000 in price reductions in the hole. And a lot of our clients will bring us in after if they're not getting the traction or what they need. They can still come in and make a difference.
You only have that one.
Okay.
That first impression. Sorry. So, we always say definitely stage before listing, but it doesn't hurt to also bring a stager in if the house is not selling, because we are less than a price reduction. So, it's a better marketing strategy than just continuing to lower that price.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes, the biggest dilemma is, and we talk about this a lot on this podcast and when I teach my events, is that, a lot of real estate agents don't identify as entrepreneurs, like in their core. And so like I'm part of a mastermind group here, all entrepreneurs, and several of them are 7-figure entrepreneurs. And there's a very, very different level in how an entrepreneur thinks. The last guest on the podcast was a $30 million a year entrepreneur that owns a supplement company, self-made. And it's just such a different thing when you think about like someone's like, hey, like taking full responsibility and be like, hey, I'm just going to, what an entrepreneur defines as is someone that takes above average risk. You take higher risk. So it's part of taking risk. And so I think the traditional real estate agent, because of the structure of brokerage and team lead and company culture, a lot of them are like not really willing to take risk. So when it comes to like, hey, if they're going to take staging, they might look at the cost as a risk, or same thing with high quality media. I don't want to go all in with video. Let's just see what happens with like $200 photos. And then if the house will sell, the reason why this is, and this is the bummer in the industry that we really hope to correct, is if you're an agent and you're listing a house, let's call it $500,000. And then that you're not going to get that. You don't mind price reducing, because whatever number you get for that house, your commission is going to be relatively the same. When the house drops 50,000, you didn't lose that much, but that homeowner lost a ton of money.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem when the agent's like, hey, like who cares? Like what it makes, what is it? $3,000 to me. I'm going to make my 20, whatever that is. They don't care. And so that's something we really try to help educate. And I think that one of the goals for this podcast and one of the goals with the content we put out is educating home sellers in what's possible, so they can hold their realtor a little bit more accountable for what they need to be had done. Right. And I do agree, like as a media company, media professional, I urge staging. Staging should happen. It's going to make our job way easier, but it's going to make that person more money. And that's really the root of this. If you can help make that seller more money, and you're involved in that, you're a real estate agent, you're a stager, you're a media company, you're helping someone make more money. You're attaching yourself to the energy of money and the abundance of money, and you're going to make more money. But when you start thinking like, cut this, cut that, cut this, cut that, let's see what I can do, you're now attaching yourself to this lack of money. And this has 1000% been true in my life. In times of my life when I've been a little more scarce and I've been afraid to spend, my bank account has reflected that over the next 6 months, So like when you think about agents that make an investment, I think a lot of your clients, right, your repeat business. I see a lot of the same agents every time, because once they have a great experience, like, hey, why would I not do this? Right. It's like, that was a great experience.
We've had agents that have used us for, 10, 12 years, and a lot of them won't even take a listing that's vacant unless they stage it, because it's their brand. That's how they get all their referral business. And so again, kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying about, well, it doesn't really affect the realtors' commissions, but it affects the sellers. It does affect the realtors because they're not getting that referral business
That next
by
one.
shorting or, shortcutting, excuse me.
Yeah.
By shortcutting the process, they're eliminating potential referral based business.
Yeah, but it's like how I meant that was like in the short term, like they're thinking a short term, like
yes, correct.
short term, short money. So like I made this video last year that was really, it was kind of meant to be funny, but it was like 3 reasons in the light to not use 8 Limbs Creative. And reason number 1 was if you only care about making 10 grand, you can take a tender date on a trip to Tulum. And it might not be as relative in like Lakeland, but out here you have a lot of these guys who are like 30 years old and that they make they make 10 grand, they go to Mexico, they blow their money with some girl from the internet, they come back and they're like scrapping for the new listing. And I'm like, man, that is such a funny way to run a business. There's no longevity in that. It's like it's short-term thinking. And I think that's how they do it. Like, hey, we don't care. And I've heard people like, hey, just transactions volume. I don't care if I price reduce from 30 grand, I don't lose anything. What do I lose?
There's also stagers out there that do the same thing. Like we put a lot of our money back into our business to make sure that our quality of inventory is, you know, really, really excellent. So we can continue to service our clients appropriately. And I'm not going to talk bad about stagers, but there's a lot of stagers that will take that paycheck for themselves and not give it back to their company to continue to grow their business. And it's just that risk. It's the entrepreneur risk, right? It's like you got to continue to be better than your competition all the time and to build your business up. So
it's the investment of like what it won't last. That the good thing is when you think about it, if someone's like, hey, like let's just refer to staging and not say my business, like, oh, someone's like not taking that money and reinvesting in new furniture and new stuff, right? Well,
New
cool.
trend.
Like that's better for you guys because after a couple of years, like, hey, you guys are outdated. Your stuff's falling apart.
They fall off.
I've had it. We've gone to houses before where I sat on a couch and the thing just collapsed. I'm like, oh my God, you can't sit on this furniture. And I'm like, I had no idea. Like, oh, it's like that puts them in the position where they're playing catch up now. So it all just equal out. It might not seem like it in the short term, but it does all equal out in the long run. Like I love Gary Vee's philosophy is there is no competition ever. You don't pay attention to competitors. You just focus on what you can do and how you can deliver. And like you will break free because eventually, especially the ones who are charging less, if someone charges less for their service, they have so much less profit left over for investment, for scaling, for new hires. And for us, where we do so well is advertising dollars. We spend a lot of money in advertising my businesses. So like, it's not just we create videos, but we put it out there. So it's like, hey, that's because I charge much. I have money to grow. So I'm going to be there 10 years from now. And that fly by night company's gone 2 years. So a question I wanted to ask about the furniture is how do you go about getting new stuff? Do you just go into regular furniture stores? Is there a certain type of stuff that stagers use?
So we go to furniture markets every year. So we go to either High Point, Vegas, Atlanta, Texas. So we are constantly above the curve of the trend. So I want to know what's going to be trending in 2024, not what's trending right now. So then when we're buying furniture, we do have furniture lines. So we don't go to furniture stores. That way we can keep our prices down at a good cost for our sellers to use us. We're constantly ahead of that curve and we're giving somebody a look that they may never have seen before. And that also impacts the staging because when they walk into that house, they're like, this is absolutely gorgeous. And I haven't seen this before done. So
And that's why a lot of our buyers actually inquire if the furniture is for sale because they love the design element.
They want to keep
how it's prepared because they just fall in love with not just the space in the house, but they're like, man, this is exactly what I would want if I was going to pay 10 times more for a professional interior designer to come in and do this for me. It's already done for them. So that happens quite a bit too.
Yeah, then at least they get a vision of it. That even if they don't keep the furniture, you were there, you have the photo. So at least that couple now has a reference point for how to. So they, hey, like, babe, we're gonna buy all new furniture. I love what I saw. They have photos now, so they can go like, oh, that sectional couch, that couch, I like art there. Like that is pretty cool. It's like another incentive where it gives that new homeowner that benefit where they can like almost have a cheat sheet to make their house look great.
Yeah. And I only hire interior designers. I mean, that's just something that I'm not willing to hire somebody that just has talent or a knack for decorating. They have to have the skill set to go out and execute perfect stagings every time. I always like to say, I don't go into a house and play house in somebody's largest investment of their life. I go in there and I execute a job with my knowledge and my degree and my stager's degrees in design too. So you're paying for experts to be in your house to execute a job well done every single time.
Yeah, and expert matters. I had a conversation with a client this week on the phone. He's a client that's used us several times and he has a luxury property coming up and He booked in for it. We gave him a quote, and he said, "Hey, I gotta be honest with you, my other guy will do that for half the price." And I was like, "Well, why haven't you used your other guy for the last 3 listings?" And I was like, you use it because you want what we do. I was like, just like you want to be treated like professional. This is 10 years in the making. What we have. When I have film school graduates that are shooting these properties, this isn't like some kid that used to work at an auto shop that's taking photos with a $200 camera. Like, this is like legit what we're doing here. So, I hope we can get the same level of respect and professionality that you expect from your clients. And he was like, wow, when you put it like that, and like on the phone, he's like, very good point. Booked with us, moved on. But it's true, like, and in real estate, there are so many levels of professionality. And like, I think that's something that when I first got into this business, I started to realize that it's almost like agents can only see themselves as like the most valuable professional, like the only professional in this. Everyone else is kind of vendors, and they can just like, let's just price shop. But yes, when you get a good staging company, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Some houses that I walked into, especially some of the luxury houses, there's one right now that we just did on Bayshore that was a $6.9 million property, Bayshore, completely staged. I mean, it changed that house. It changed the entire way that house looked. I couldn't even imagine doing that thing. And it's unique stuff in there. You couldn't do that without a staging company. So you're not going to hire someone that this is their first stage for a place like that. You're going to hire somebody. They're going to come in. What does that process look like? So let's just say you guys got a $5 million property to stage and it's empty. You would go personally to the property, or would you? How would that work?
Yeah. So we always view the properties live. And we would, take measurements, take pictures, take videos of the space, just so we can come back with our team and plan it accordingly.
Cool.
And we have it.
And what goes there, like, so you walk in, you look at the property, and then like, I guess I'm trying to imagine, I might get this wrong, but how I imagine it would look is you'd walk in, you look at the property, you take your notes, and then you'd go back to your warehouse and be like, okay, what do we have? What's not already in use, right? Then you're like, cool, this couch is going to go here, this art, is that kind of how it looks?
Yeah, so we have a system. It's called Stage Force, and so every single item in our warehouse, we do about 45 houses at a time, so we have a lot of inventory. But everything has an RFID code on it, and it's logged into our system. So when we're in there, it has all the houses that are currently staged out there with all the inventory in those houses, and so it only shows what's available in our warehouse. So when we're pulling, we can pull by room in our system. And so we can see how the whole house will look once it's in the house. So it's called a crew report that we print out for our team, and then they load it on the truck. So you have to have systems to be able to grow,
Yeah, I've never dealt with that where you have the inventory of what's available.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you're coming into, like, when the stage goes in, you guys bring a truck, like just like someone's moving in, right? You're moving in the property, and you have guys who carry it, right? Like just workers. I'm sure it's not you two carrying it all the time in.
No, so we have our logistics team.
Every once in a while, sometimes.
Whenever, I'm with you when something has to happen.
Right. So we have 3 box trucks. We can do 2 to 3 stagings a day, or 2 stagings and a D stage, whatever that looks like. And our team takes care of it. So we usually have 2 to 3 guys on each job. And then we also have a stager or 2 stagers on each job, just depending on the size.
That's awesome. Yeah, we just involve one of the services that Alim's Creative does, and now, or basically myself does, is we'll marketing partner with these agents. So we'll come on, instead of us saying like, hey, we'll do media for you. There's a house that was a $5 million house in Treasure Island that wasn't able to sell. And I met the homeowner at a Christmas party for Keller Williams, and she talked to me. Chris actually connected us. And she goes, hey, what can you do for me? I'm like, why don't I come on at 10% your commission, and then we'll do whatever I think needs to be done to sell this house. The house was staged and waterfront and gorgeous, but the marketing was just a little, they didn't know how to market this luxury property. So we came in and we did I did a full YouTube tour. We did 8 different videos or cinematic reels. We just did all out what we're capable of doing. We would have probably charged $10,000 for this media, but instead I'm like, I'll just take a cut. But if it doesn't sell, I don't get paid at all. And they were happy with the idea of that. But this house was staged, it was 3 stories. And so I remember and I drive by this house all the time now. So it just closed. We just got paid on it. It was pretty cool success for us, and we're doing testimonial. But I've been watching them destage, and I'm like, 3 stories through those stairways. I can't imagine what that's like, and it was full, right? Everything. Every room.
Sometimes elevators can be challenging.
Oh yeah.
So, you definitely have to not just measure the condo or what you're staging, but you have to measure the elevators. And even if there's like any kind of weird angles going into the elevator, measure that too, so you know exactly what to pull.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that inventory style thing. So when you guys started doing staging, how did this business start to scale? Like, did this start with just you two and a garage, or like what was the, or you went to school for this, as I heard, so it wasn't just like you just decided to do this, it was a planned thing, right? But I kind of love to hear people's origin stories, right? I love entrepreneur origin stories and how it got there. So
yeah, no, so I started the business in 2011, and I thought I was just going to do occupied stagings, and my first staging was actually a vacant. And so we emptied our house out and my neighbor's house. I knocked on my neighbor's door and I'm like, can I borrow your dining room table? And she's like, sure. She's like, what else do you need? And she actually became my assistant for about 8 years. Yeah. But anyways, so that's kind of how we got into vacant stagings. You know, you just can't have fear. You know, we were talking about that earlier, right? It's like if an opportunity comes your way, you just figure it out and make sure that you can execute it professionally, but with my design skills and my knowledge for, you know, working for builders and doing model homes and stuff, I did have that knowledge already. So I knew that, you know, it would turn out good. And then from there, we started in a little teeny tiny storage unit, and I thought I had made it. I was like, oh my gosh, I have a storage unit.
I got a place. Yeah.
I got a place. And then we went from like 1 storage unit to like 8 storage units. And then we went from that to a small warehouse. And then we went from a small warehouse to now we have 10,000 square feet. Patrick came on board in 2018. And a funny story, I'd always say, when he'd ask me what I wanted for Christmas every year, I'm like, I want your resume in my stocking. And he's like, ha, ha, ha. Like, I'm not going to put all our eggs in one basket. And I said, well, in order to scale this, I need you, because otherwise I'm going to hire somebody and pay them basically your salary that you're getting paid. And so we made that decision in 2018 for Patrick to come on board. And it's just grown crazy since he's come on board.
I think that's huge. We were just speaking about this. Now, being an entrepreneur is a couple involved thing. And so some of the most successful I've met, they're both involved. And here's why that is. And this, like, it didn't really like jump out to me as why until just recently. So it's like, if you're growing a business, it is 24/7, 365. Even if you're not working, you're thinking about it. It's like, I might take my daughter to the yacht club pool on the weekend, but 1000% I'll look at something or I'll hear a lyric for a song, and that makes me go on this whole thought train of like, oh, we could do this and they would definitely love it and they would buy it, right? That's how I think. So it's probably the same for you guys. You're always thinking about something.
Always.
So it's like, if you have 2 separate careers completely, what usually is going to happen is you're going to take conversational time to talk about something that's neutral for you both. It's not related to either career, or you're talking about one or the other, right? So one of you is being pulled away. So when you know, one of my guys, he's a manager in our business now, Michael Walker, who shoots in Lakeland, does all of our listings out there. He manages our whole Polk County area. He's also a part owner of our course business. So what I was talking about is like, he just got a new girlfriend. And Michael, if you're listening to this, all love for you, man. But when he got a new girlfriend, and they're dating and they're going out and they're hanging out, I was like, that's a huge disadvantage, because now every single time that they're hanging out, they're not talking about business. They're not talking about ways to grow this thing.
Right.
They're not talking about ways he can make money. Talking about her, getting to know her and what she wants to do and her hobbies or interests. So it's like, when you're with your person, you guys are in this together. Even on the Sunday, you guys are getting ahead. So like, the couples that I've seen that actually kill it, and I've been so grateful enough to meet them out here, where you meet these $10 million homeowners and you talk to them and you find out their story and, hey, how'd you guys get here? A lot of them was like that. The best one example, we rented a tiger for a home. I don't know if you guys ever saw that media. You might have seen it because it went kind of viral for us, but it was a $3,500 tiger for a half-day shoot. $10 million house, and agent wanted it for some eye-catching content. But as I'm talking to the homeowners, and there was an interior designer who had done a huge amount with his home from new construction. This house had just got done being built. So it wasn't for sale, but then it was all about like, hey, look at how exquisite this place was, right? And I was talking to the interior designer and the homeowners, and I was asking the guy, of course, I'm like, hey, like, Scott, what's up, man? Like, you're in great shape. You're in your 50s. You got 3 sons. You're killing it in all the levels that I can see. Happy marriage. Like, what's up? When did it click for you? And he's like, it's when I recruited my wife into this business. He's like, when she left being a vet and came in to work with us, he's like, our financial life changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And I didn't think about why. I thought I was like, oh, because she was such an asset. That's how I viewed that. But now I'm realizing it is that probably true. She's probably very competent and great asset, but it's all like, hey, now it's 2 people with all their energies being sent to one thing, and it becomes laser focused. Like, if you take a garden hose and you got pressure, but you start poking a little needle hose in it, you're losing it in every little thing. So the more you can pressurize in one direction, You know,
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's exactly how it is. And there's a lot of times like we'll go out to dinner on like Friday and we're like, okay, work's over, we're done. We're not going to talk about
never
work.
over.
No, we always end up talking about work, you know, so it's so true. We work 24/7, but we also love what we do. We're very
Yeah.
fortunate to have a career that we're super passionate about. We love our realtors that use us. We're friends with a lot of them. The relationships that we've made are really special. And, you know, you learn from, you know, other people too that you do business with. And then it definitely makes us stronger too. And it's very interesting to kind of talk about like creative ways to expand the business and know that it's safe between us, you know, like he's not going to go and tell somebody else. I know some partnerships can go sour and then all of your, you know, secrets are out there. And with a married couple, it's like, well, you're in it together. So I think
that's very true. I agree. So circling back it never will be over. It never ends. Right. And I think I've seen that. Like, I think what I expected was some of these people that I've met that are in their 50s that are super successful millionaires in an entrepreneur life. I was like, so like, when does it? And I'm like, no, bro, it never, like it never does. Like I heard it said very well. This guy's like, hey man, like today's a really good day and I'm chilling and we're on the yacht and this guy's yacht hanging out. He's like, but I could wake up tomorrow to a shitstorm of problems. And I just know that. And it's like, it can still happen at this stage. And I just got to handle them. I'm just going to enjoy today right now while I have it. And then I'll handle those when I get there. Not going to worry about them ahead of time.
Yep. And we do a lot too, nationally as well. I'm on the national board of the Real Estate Staging Association. There's 7 of us that represent the United States and Canada. And I give back in that way. We're part of a couple of masterminds just like you. And so I feel like you learn so much from other people across the country and how they're doing their business and then bringing it back to, you know, Lakeland and Central Florida. It's pretty special. So we're constantly educating ourselves and getting out there and getting uncomfortable, right? Because you kind of have to get uncomfortable in situations and ask kind of maybe some dumb questions to make sure that your business is constantly growing. So
yeah, no, I agree. That's the next thing I wanted to go into was that like you will learn so much. Like I was saying earlier before we got in the show, like when I moved 3 years ago, moved over here, I was able to meet so many people who own service-based businesses. Even though it's not in my same niche, it's exactly the same scaling process. You have people, you have marketing, you have inventory, you have sales, and what can you do with them and how do you guys do it? So I think that's huge is when you find people that you feel comfortable enough to speak to and express some vulnerability and like, hey, I'm struggling with this part. What do you guys think? Oh, dude, that's easy. I figured that out 2 years ago. Here's what you do with this. And a lot can change with that. So I think for me, like that doesn't come from my clients because my real estate agents don't have any knowledge on how to scale a real estate media business. So most of the people we talk to aren't giving me insightful information besides how can I better sell something to them. I listen to their problems and I go, okay, they're struggling with this. Let's create the solution. Right. But in general, we don't like, I don't know many other media owners as I don't know if you guys, how many other staging companies you speak to all the time. So
we do a lot, which is helpful, but we've kind of put ourselves out there to know a lot and to, you know, build those relationships with people that we can help and they can help us. So
I love it. What was one of the biggest stages you've ever done?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question.
Like whether that's the biggest size home or public, like, cause it could be different. It could be like, hey, this one got featured in this article or magazine, or this was just a huge, you know, movement of goods or whatever that was.
It was a large estate. It was multiple houses on an estate. You had a main house, and then you had like a secondary cottage, and then you also had a boat house, and you had a pool house. So it was like numerous houses in one, and it took up a lot of space. It was pushing 8 figures. It wasn't quite at it, but the square footage was massive, and it required a significant amount of inventory to do it right.
Where was that property at?
Required a lot of design process. So we not only stage, but we also help the sellers with conditional issues. So if they need like a paint package or a lighting package or flooring or whatever, we are their go-to for that too. So so this project needed a lot of that up front, and then we staged it, and they wanted everything staged, every single room and every property on the.
Yeah, and that particular property, Tony, was in Mountain Lake Estates, which is a really exclusive community, kind of out here in Central Florida, Lake Wales area. But we had similar properties like that in St. Petersburg and down by Lakewood Ranch in Sarasota. There's a lot of large houses back in there.
Yeah, we did something like that for Ben Beckton a couple years ago, but I was like, this sounds like this house was an equestrian estate, but it wasn't because that's not where it's at. This is like in Ocala area. Yep. But yeah, something I want to ask too is what would make more sense for you guys? Would you rather just being like, let's just say, okay, let's go back to the beginning. when someone's going to sell their house, we call this like the audition, right? So if someone's thinking about selling their home and they haven't talked to anyone about it yet, but they're like, hey, we're going to list their home this year. This is a homeowner. They've got a house worth $800,000. They've had it for years and they've kept up with their maintenance, but maybe not the furniture inside. So it would benefit from staging. What they're going to start doing is now we call this like it's frequency illusion. If you're thinking about buying like a certain type of vehicle, like a Ford Bronco, you're going to notice them all over the road. They're going to be everywhere, right? So now you're going to start noticing all the real estate agents marketing. So you might not have noticed all year, but now this month you're really noticing, oh wow, real estate, you're seeing billboards, bus stuff, everything. So that person's like primed and ready to start speaking to people in what they're going to do to sell their home. Would it be more beneficial for you guys to speak to a home seller at that stage, or is it more beneficial for you guys to speak to the agent after the agent's already got the listing? Does that make sense? The question?
Yeah, no, I think it's both.
Okay.
So we speak with a ton of sellers before they even hire an agent.
Same. They'll call us like, hey, we want them to do it. So a lot of times I'll have the agent go, hey, my client said I have to use you guys. And I'm like, I love that our brand is that way, because they might not have really wanted to, but they're like, my client said I got us. So I'm like, well, they know what they want,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's commonplace too.
Yeah. And so sometimes when the sellers call us, then they'll ask us, well, I'm interviewing, this realtor. What do you think? And we know the realtor and we have a good relationship with them. Of course, we always go to bat for our realtors. But sometimes they don't have a realtor at all. And so, of course, we're going to give those referrals to people that use us all the time. It's just giving back.
Yeah, that's huge. When you can throw something in their lap, we get the same. Like we have a lot of FSBOs that call in to us because they don't want to deal with realtors. They just want professional media done, or at least photography. Yeah. And I can usually talk to them and get them to go with a realtor. And always there's no, I don't care if this sounds fair or not. I give it to our realtors who uses the most. So it's quickly, I can look through and be like, who we made the most money off of in the last couple of years? For sure. It's this one. And I call them like, hey, here you go. Well, I'm going to take care of them because they're really consistent, good clients to us, right? It's not going to be someone who's used us once, right?
Yep. And we have realtors that just specialize in certain things. So if it's something that somebody specializes in, I'm like, this is the perfect agent for you because they specialize in this area with this style of home or whatever. So it really kind of depends a lot on that.
Or does it help your sales process, I guess, was the question, if you speak to the seller first? Because I know we were saying earlier, sometimes agents can just, it's not like, I don't want to use the word like they're cheap, but they are in financial scarcity they're afraid to take risk. So sometimes an agent might be like, hey, we can't afford staging and we can't afford video. We're just going to do basic photography. And it's like, you really are like hurting your clients here the most.
They're putting them in a box. Yeah, they're judging them before really knowing if their client can afford it or not afford it.
But does the cost go to client, I guess?
What's that?
Does the cost for staging usually go to client? Like, where does the cost for staging hit? Is it agent pays that up front, agent pays that after, client pays that at closing table? How does it all work?
So it's really different for everybody. And again, like every realtor is their own entrepreneur, their own business. So they can set that up however they choose to set it up. We have some agents that pay for every single staging because they want to make sure that they lock in the staging and they don't want to leave that up to the sellers.
And they want their brand to be attached to a well-staged home every time. Yeah.
And they're getting more listings because they're putting that in their presentations. Hey, we stage every property. Other agents will say, I use a great stager. I think that we need to listen, bring them in, see what they have to say. And they set the stage up for us to go in and do our pitch, and then the sellers pay. So it really depends on how they want to set it up.
More often than not, a majority of our paying clients, at least here in Central Florida, because a lot of home staging costs, if you pay for that, can differ widely regionally and with the price point of the property. So agents are usually thrilled when they know that they're going to be working with a professional stager in the Central Florida area, because it only gives them an easier way to market the property. It gives them, like I said before, that competitive marketing advantage. And it allows them to have something that's going to showcase their brand and also their property and elevate it above a variety of other listings out there. So it just really depends. And sometimes regionally, it depends greatly on the price point of the property or the area. So for example, in like LA or New York, where you don't have a lot of warehouse space, sometimes a lot of stagers are renting furniture versus 100% owning it. And a lot of times agents, because they're listing for 14.5 or 26 million, the expectation is, because the commission is so high for the agent, that they would usually pay for the cost of staging. That happens a lot some of your major metropolitan cities, but it can be very reversed that in some smaller towns and smaller cities and so on and so forth. So it's very regional.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it isn't, but realistically, and one thing I think I learned this from you guys, and maybe it was 2 years ago. I might've seen you post about it, but I never thought about doing pay at closing before. And I just, we don't do that. So we do upfront payments. Like when someone wants to work with us, which is most time, they pay right then and there when they book. And of course, if something happens, I'm like, hey, it's raining, we have to cancel, we just refund it. But we found that this gets so much more commitment, because the other way we used to book and take payment when we delivered the media, we would have them treat us with such disrespect for schedule. They would be late, they would cancel, they'd postpone because they haven't paid anything yet. They're not committed to anything yet.
Right.
That's right. They have skin in the game at that point. And that's how it works for a majority of our clients. The majority of our clients pay usually the execution of deciding to want to move forward with staging. They sign the contract, they pay the invoice, and then that date is reserved for them. So there's
now they're excited. They're like, oh, I just did something.
They're committed to it. But that's why we looked at the market like 3 or 4 years ago, and we're like, listen, we have quite a bit of people who want the benefit that professional home staging provides, but sometimes they're tapped out on doing conditional upgrades. They upgrade the roof or the floor, they had to paint, but they know they want the staging and it can make a difference. But sometimes they're out of funds. So the pay at closing model worked great for them, where they could partner with one of our partners we partner with. And it allows them to get the benefit of that, to have the completed product, and then really get the most, bang for their buck, and then not have to worry about that until closing escrow, which is very,
when you guys do pay at closing, do you guys ever ask questions on how they comp the house?
Yes, that's part of the process.
Are you looking for an
absurd
absurd
It's part of the process.
Right. Yeah,
correct. That's right. It is part of the process. There's a short qualification process for that. It's a concierge platform. We partner with a third-party company that we work with, and they do a great job. And that's kind of how that works. So as long as it's a very short, brief process, and our clients love it because it's very smooth and transitional.
Yeah, because we learned that too. When someone's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but I'm like, wait. When the listing would go live, the first couple of times, I'm like, this house isn't going to sell because it's priced like $200,000 too high. And there's just there. So we had to learn that process, but we don't actually have too many use it, but it is really nice to be able to offer that. And I've noticed that by offering that, it does like, okay. And then they'll usually end up just booking like a normal client, but they know that you want to work with me and that you're on my side.
Yep, that happens. Just like your business, Tony, it's the same with ours. A majority of the folks that might be interested or considering pay closing, ultimately they end up just going directly through us because it's a little more quicker, it's a little more efficient, and they can just kind of move around their own listing time frame in their schedule. So that happens quite a bit too.
I think too, like when I first started this business up until, maybe like 5 years ago, a lot of realtors would be like, well, I don't get paid until closing, so why can't you get paid at closing? And I don't know if you've ever gotten that, Tony, or not, but for us, we have a lot of overhead, like a ton. Like we put anywhere from like $10,000 to $30,000 of inventory into a house. Plus we have a large staff that we have to pay. So if that house is sitting on the market for 90 days or, whatever, we're holding that. And we'd go out of business if we did that. So
it's a different business. And I would accept
really
that.
Different business.
Very different business.
It was me creating that understanding where it was like, I learned quickly this past year about that 10%. Now we'll do that for any house. So if anyone ever said that, I'm like, great, you could pay us our price or we take 10% of your commission. Cause I don't mind waiting to get paid, but I'm like, hey, I should get paid a commission, a percentage now.
Exactly.
This flat rate. It's like, hey, if I don't mind waiting, but it's going to be 10%. And so how we do that is we just decide what the number is. We look at the house, what it's listed at now, and I'll round down. And I'm like, okay, that's going to be 12 grand even then. No, we're about 13 for. Just take 12 grand. That's we agree. We do contracts, send it off, and now it's good. Now the house is live. We get paid after. And I'm fine with that because that is fair. And now we have to help them. So on our side, it's like, we can be like, hey, the house isn't selling and it's been listed for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We have all this media that we already collected. So now I can just say, hey, create me another video, new trending audio. Let's make one just about the outdoor living spaces. Let's make one just about this beautiful kitchen. And we can just keep pumping media out for that agent until the house sells. And that's the benefit of that side of it. But yeah, it's like we should be getting involved on these commissions for these properties when the work is done in that way. That's what I'm saying. There's a big disconnect. And I'm really working to try to remedy this in real estate, where agents do believe that they're the only ones that deserve to make a lot of money. And they don't want to, oftentimes they don't see their vendors in that way. They'll see.
Tony, you talked about like having, how certain people in certain, conglomerates of business have an entrepreneurial mindset. And I feel like a lot of agents have an entrepreneurial mindset, but a lot of them do not. And they kind of struggle with understanding what else they can do, or they're almost like a fiduciary responsibility to their home seller of what is I as a professional agent, what can I offer my home seller on a listing presentation, or why they should choose me as their agent versus somebody else, to give them all the marketing advantages potentially possible to list their house, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to look at video? Am I going to look at aerial photography drone? Am I going to look at professional home staging? Am I going to look, really, play like the nice bad guy and talk to my sellers like, listen, we have a variety of things that if you want to get, A price for this property versus B price for this property, we can do this, or you can do nothing and list it for this. So to have a conversation from really a real drive, looking at all angles, makes a successful realtor, I feel like, and those realtors stand above the curve from a lot of the other agents. A lot of the agents I know that we work with are kind of like the higher end agents, more the cream of the crop. So it's not uncommon for people to really know who the agents are that work with us, because everybody constantly sees them all the time, and their brand reflects that because of the services they provide, and they kind of tell their clients what they should do to properly sell their house quickly.
Yeah,
I agree. There's okay.
They're not sorry. I think those agents are so successful because they're not worried about being honest with their clients.
Yeah, there's a lot of power. No, huge.
Yeah. Right.
I just interviewed Justin Smith. He's like the guy out here. So he was in the podcast on Friday. He's got a phenomenal online presence. He was an actor in all kind of shows. He was on like Vampire Diaries and like The Wire. And he came out of acting, went right into real estate. And so the way he does his videos is like skits. Like when Top Gun was trending, this whole Top Gun, he acted this whole thing out with the house. And he's like, you remember the house, 2-bedroom, 3-bathroom with the pool? Like he's really good with his media. Okay. And we had him on there and I was asking about like what he thinks makes the best agent. And I thought he was going to say the marketing side. And he's like being able to say no and not give a shit about it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll walk in and they'll say, I want to get this. Like, sorry guys, can't help you. He's like, I have no problem walking away from delusional sellers and saying, I'm not going to risk my reputation for price reducing the house if it's listed at that. And he's like, the biggest thing is if you have enough money that you can say no to the client versus you're scrapping for it. You have to say yes, and it ruins your brand. So I think there's truth in that and telling the clients no. And then going back to what you're saying is some of the high-end agents, I think it's the same. Like most of our clients are higher end. 8 Limbs, that definitely is more of a premium service. So when the agents are like photography only, for instance, agents, we're not working with them too often. And what's so cool for us, like I know a lot of our clients use you. Right off the top of my head, I know Christine Ellenbeck uses you guys for staging. She's using us for all of her listings too. So she's an example. She has one of the highest volumes of, especially last year. We would look at monthly invoices and we're like, look how many houses this woman sells, right? But it's like every time she sells a house, she goes in. She went in our full package with us. I'm sure she had you guys stage a lot of them if they needed it, or maybe all of them. And it's like that reflects how many new listings she gets. So she's not like maybe the first one of the year, she might have the least profit because a lot of costs were in. But then by the time you have 5, 6, 7, now that profit starts to pile up on her. And it's like, cool, now I'm good. So it does make a difference in the branding. That's what I think the biggest differential with the entrepreneur is. All agents are entrepreneurs, but definitely not all of them have an entrepreneur mind. And not all people are going to have that. That's something I learned from Matt Gallant, the guy was saying that makes $30 million a year. He was saying that personality tests matter. He's like, do personality tests. Not everyone is going to be an entrepreneur and bear all that responsibility, all that weight, or be even the type of person that will take risk like that. Yeah. There's like this screenshot text. You see a lot of entrepreneurs share this, and it's a text and it's like a conversation. And one person saying to the other on like iPhone says, hey man, I want to get rich. I just don't want to take that much risk. And the response is, bro, that's where all the money is. Like in the risk, right? It's there. So it's like, you're going to have to do it eventually. When you guys bought that 10,000 or rented your 10,000 foot warehouse, whatever you did, you're probably like, you probably feel it. You feel it, but it's like nervous. And then you turn the nervousness right to excitement. You're like, no, we're doing it. It fires you up, right? You're committed to it. There's something to that. That's what I've learned this from a coach, that every time you spend money in your business, like when you say, like when you pay that invoice for the high package media, you feel an emotional charge right then and there. It's most often not, oh shit, I spent too much money. No, it's like, okay, I'm that guy. I'm the guy who goes in. I'm the guy who markets. I'm the guy who's committed. And you start to act that way, at least for the weekend, for the week. You might dip back down as your confidence lowers a little bit, but the more you can sustain those, like I take risk and I identify as that states, the more people can feel that impression of increase on you and they deal with you, and the business comes. And I think the agents who do that well do it very well. That's how we've got I believe 2, I think second one up now, but 2 millionaire real estate agents in our business that we work with that are making over $1 million a year in commission. And if you look at these people and their social medias, it is a full operation. They have full teams of everyone, and they're spending money on advertising and marketing and staging. And, one of them will go and put marketing like rakes with their branding on it, and give them to all their previous sellers and drop it off at their house. Just drop it off with the branding to clean up leaves after fall. Like just nurturing, like they're just spending money on things like that. Like, I don't know how much a rake is, but I'm sure it's not cheap to do at scale like that.
Well, and I also like to say too, I think a lot of people get comfortable once they hit a certain price point that they're making. Like, okay, I'm making 150,000. I'm comfortable now. I don't need to change anything. And that's when you start losing it. I think that you can never get comfortable in your business. You always have to do something different every single season to make sure that you are staying excited, staying relevant to the outside.
Yeah.
And we see people get comfortable all the time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're losing it because you're comfortable. So we try to coach even stagers on that too. It's like, okay, I get that you just spent this much money on inventory last year, but if you use this for the next 3 years, you're going to be stale. Like, keep going, keep
people
spending.
Can forget about you so fast too. Something you guys do a great job with is putting video content out. I remember seeing that when I first moved out here. I've always watched your content because I would see you guys doing conversational topics like this. Annie doing videos, Patrick doing videos, and I was like, great, they get it. And it's something that like when we do our events, I always talk about this. I'm like, guys, if you don't like, we're delusional about our relationships with people. And what I mean is like, we can be like, oh my God, they're a really good friend of mine. I think people always use that word too loosely now too. Like, oh, they're my friend, bro. They're not your friend. You know that guy. You've talked to him at the gym 4 times. That is not your friend. You don't know where he lives. You don't know anything about him. You with me? And so I was like, you think he's your friend? Cool. Unfollow him on social media and watch how long it is before you ever think about him again.
Yeah.
Just to test that, right? Like, oh, I know this guy. Cool. And I did this. I unfollowed a person on social media just because sometimes I just feel like the content, especially if someone's posting content I don't want to see all the time, I'll at least mute them. And that means I won't see them anymore. Now, I bumped into this person at a New Year's Eve party, and it struck me. I have not thought about them in about 9 months, period. Not once. I completely forgot this person existed. Okay. And that is how real that can happen. So when you own a business, if you're not constantly putting yourself in front of your clients, don't act like your clients owe you something. Like, oh, no, bro, they forgot about you. You fell off. You're like, you got to constantly remind them. So the agents to do it well, the companies to do well are constantly in sight in mind, whether it's infotainment, education, funny stuff. Hey, this is a new couch we just bought, but you stay in mind. You're, oh yeah, they're out there. They still exist. They still exist. And they can remember you. So I always tell the agents like, hey, like you're mad because Johnny got that listing. Johnny spends more money on marketing than you. Who deserves it more? Like he's in sight. He's showing up at networking events. He's, out there shaking hands and meeting people, and you're not. So like, of course you're just not as memorable. So like, there's something to that as well. Like speaking on the marketing side, which I think we do very well, is just being everywhere all the time and not just online. Online is the easiest place because you can batch out content and have something to post every single day, but then as well as be in person and networking. Like there's not a whole lot. We're sponsoring our first event in Lakeland, which is the Keller Williams annual award ceremony in March at House 820. It's the first event that we've even done in Lakeland. Out here, about sponsoring a ton, and not only sponsoring for logo, but being there in person. That really helps the presence, So like agents, the way that we market are the same way that all of us can market. If you're a staging company owner, you're a mortgage guy, you're a title guy, you're an agent, you're whatever you are, you can market the same way. You got to be in sight, in mind with your people. And not let them forget about you, I think you guys do a really good job with that.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah. And we see your stuff all the time too. So kudos.
I love that. Yeah. Well, so one of the things about that too, that's the one thing I want to ask you about next is like marketing commitment. So we used to do this. Okay. What really caused this business for us to grow rapidly was when I got out here in St. Pete and I started to notice how I would see like high quality media done. I would see a real estate agent post something. It was a great video. Okay. And then I would click and I would be like, who did this? Could never figure out who that was. It was never tagged. It was never any comments, whatever. Yeah. And I would see that happen a lot. And I was like, and I just wanted to see what else I was out here dealing with, who else was out here good at video. But then I started to realize I'm like, wait, how often does it happen to us with our clients? And they can't even find us, right? So it was about 1.5 years ago where we put it in our service agreement as a contractual agreement. We must be tagged in all of our media. So if our media goes anywhere, we have to be tagged, a clickable tag in the description, right? And I still think we're the only ones that do that for photography. I don't see anyone else do that, especially out here or in Lakeland. But it changed everything for us because we became so much more findable.
I feel like we tried to do that too. And I think that's something that we're going to be implementing as well, because we have a lot of people use our stagings, but never say it's up by stage.
Yeah, you need to have that tagged. It's so important.
Yeah. And really, I mean, if we're tagging somebody in like a post or something of a house we just did, we always put the realtor information out there because we're part of their marketing strategy. But I'm like, well, in return, please put our stuff out there
Yeah.
because we work hard for you and do a good job consistently. So
You're usually going to have the conversation, educate. It's usually not done purposely. A couple times we broke up with one client over this because she wouldn't tag us. And I said, hey, what, just noticed we weren't tagged. She goes, yeah, I'm not going to tag you guys. I'm like, wait. And she goes, I just don't want to tag, I don't want everyone to know what I'm doing. And I said, the only reason, I called her back after, I said, the only reason I can think of that you wouldn't want to tag us is if you were trying to stop my business from growing.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to stop business from growing, I don't want to help yours grow at all. And so it's like, if that's how you feel, I'm like, yeah, let's just part ways. And we didn't work with her again after that. And she's tried to call back twice to get us. And I'm like, no, I just don't think it's fair at this point. Going back though, the conversation is usually early when they're booking. Hey, just so you know, we really focus on growing, and we're going to do every time we share all of our media. So you're going to get featured on our channels. Okay. So you as an agent are going to go on 8 Limbs Creative Instagram and our Facebook and our TikTok and our YouTube every time. And you're going to be tagged and findable. But we do require that to be done in return for us. That way, anyone that sees us does not have to DM you and wait for you to tell them who did it. They can find us. We live in abundance, and I want you guys to be in the same place. And a lot of them, once they hear it in certain words, that they get it. Oh, yes, totally. And sometimes if they forget, you just remind them, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'll fix it right now. There's a lot to post. I get that. Because when you're filling it out, there's a lot. There's description, there's this and that. But I think some of the best ones do it, and they'll tag like home staged by, home shot by, right? Like those things matter because the more collaboration vendors can have with each other, the more money we get anyways.
Yeah.
And exposure.
And it just helps them like spread the word too, you know, so.
It'll get reshared too. Explain them like, hey guys, if you list that house and now you say stage by step by stage and shot by 8 Limbs Creative, you're probably going to get reshared on a lot of other pages because we're going to reshare you and they're going to reshare you, I'm sure. And so now your house is going to get more eyes on it. So like when you look at the insight in my mentality, a lot of people still don't implement it. And I don't know what that is, but it is without a doubt. Attention is for sure the currency right now that makes the most.
It is, absolutely.
Visibility matters no matter what industry. And the more visible you can be, the more, recognition and, marketing savvy and prowess that you have in your particular field.
Yep. We got to get into a good one here. And before I ask this question, I want to state, I will take zero offense because it is a tiny fraction of our business. Tiny.
Oh, I know what you're going to go into.
We got to get into it because it's a topic I want to get into a lot. We used virtual staging a lot in the beginning, especially during COVID. And that's when we started to see it. Now, what we noticed was there was really bad virtual staging out there, like some really bad.
Really bad.
Then people would associate, like someone can go to, for instance, if someone eats steak and go, oh, I ate steak and they ate it at Applebee's for the first time. And they can be like, I hate steak. No, you hate Applebee's steak, right? Now, there can for sure be a good use for it as an option, but not always. So the way we use virtual staging is like, if there's like one room of the house that's empty, or the patio is empty, but the house, a lot of times the house can be staged, but not all of it. And we would usually know it would work well, but I do believe that there's more negatively associated with it, especially when you have someone it's usually cutting cost. So they're like, hey, let me get cheap photography for this empty house, and let me have a very cheap staging done. So someone can get virtual staging done for very, very inexpensive, but it will be done poorly. Yeah. And so now they're going to list that house. So when someone goes to view that house, they have no concept of the size of the property because the house, it was missized, right? And they can also it can look so good and be like, oh my God, it looks so nice. They get there like, this totally changes how I feel. What are you guys' thoughts on virtual staging? And do you ever see there be a use for it where it can be used effectively and profitably?
Yeah. So I'm so glad you brought this up because I think that people just need to understand how to use it.
Yeah.
Because it can make a property feel very cheap and misdone in the marketing. So I think that virtual staging is great if it's like a new build where it's not built yet, but you want to see how your furniture is going to lay out in that floor plan. It's perfect for like builders, things like that, doing spec homes. I think it's brilliant. Also, if it's more of like an occupied, where it's like they're still living there, but maybe their furniture doesn't make sense in that space to do a room or two, just like you were saying. I think for a completely vacant house, I think it misses the mark. So for instance, a staged house, this is on NAR's, the National Association of Realtors, so anybody can look it up. But an average buyer will walk into a staged house and stay on average for 37 minutes. If the house is vacant, even if it's virtually staged, right, but it's vacant when they go there, they stay on average for 7 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. What are they going to do? They're going to walk around, but nowhere to sit, nothing to do. I'm with you. I agree.
Correct. Yeah. So it has like that cheap feeling when they walk in, because they feel it's almost like bait and switch. It's like, oh, I just saw this, but this isn't what I was expecting when I walked through it. It's very echoey. It doesn't hide any conditional issues. Not saying that I'm trying to hide conditional issues by staging it, but it also gives that buyer that perspective of like, you know what, I could live here and repaint this wall afterwards, because I love how they introduced this color on that wall with that painting. So it gives them ideas, and it doesn't give them so many, points of like, oh, this needs to be fixed and this needs to be fixed and this is dated and I don't like this light fixture. They can see how they can live in the space.
I saw a colleague in another state of ours who recently had a post that I thought was hilarious, and it's really kind of gotten around the physical home staging industry, where it says virtual staging is a catfishing of real estate.
Yeah.
And I thought about that, and I was like, oh my gosh, how true is that? You get catfished into believing something's not, and then you get there and you're just let down. I feel like there's a reason why in the state of Florida that every time something's virtually staged, it has to be disclosed when people are looking at things on Zillow and Redfin, to understand that these rooms have been virtually staged, because I feel like there's been a lot of problems with feedback from buyers getting there, not necessarily, showing a proper representation. I can't tell you how many times we may have seen a virtual stage property where they put a giant section on a tiny living room, and you get there and you can barely fit a sofa in a love seat.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think the best one, the reason I brought it up was that pool table one that you shared, because I agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And one of our clients sent that and said, LOL, I know this wasn't you guys, but how funny. And I was like, yeah, like ours don't look like that. So like that, I didn't feel, but I was like, yeah, dude, like that was just bad. And that's where it can get a bad rap, because it's like anything, people just do things at a cheaper level, right?
And you get what you pay for in any industry, no matter what it is. So there's always going to be the buyer out there who's only looking at price. And a lot of times, like for people like you, Tony, and for businesses like us, that's never really going to be our clientele. Someone's solely looking at price, but they're overlooking everything else when it comes to design experience, knowledge of the industry, quality, trending, online inventory, reputation, branding. I mean, all those things that differentiate a top tier company versus something that's more
a good point.
Yeah, it just makes a huge difference, and you get what you pay for. So, I mean, if you're looking for, whomever you're hiring, whether it's, for us, we've done a lot of home remodeling since we bought our house in 2015. We have a new fence, and we had a new driveway done, and we had a pool put in. We did landscape, and we didn't want to go with the cheapest alternative for all of this, because we were nervous that it wasn't going to be to the standards that we needed. And it's no different when you're hiring a video marketing company, or if you're, even if you're going to hire a virtual stager, or you're hiring a physical stager to stage your property for sale.
Yeah, there will always be that level. There's levels to everything. And like, for sure, we have seen it. Again, virtual staging has died down quite a bit for us, which we couldn't care less. It was great at the time, because we're like, hey, we had this additional offering. And what the good thing for us was we got a lot of clients from offering virtual staging that we wouldn't have got. And now they're in our ecosystem. Right. And so we were able to get them in and then educate them. And now they're coming up to higher level packages, and they're selling better properties. So I do think it helps for the ones who need to make something happen, and they're really capped on budget. First couple ones, but it's something we don't really push. We don't even advertise it much anymore at all. We don't talk about it anymore. You don't see that. Occasionally someone will still use it, but where I think it was best used would be that exact example where there's an auxiliary bedroom or the patio furniture or whatever. It was like, hey, it's stage just one room. And we did a lot of tests too, where we would take two images and we would run them side by side and say, guess which one is real and which one was fake. And they were often skewed the opposite direction, because the stages, there's a lot of ways you can do it. It's not like you just drag and drop stickers on a photo, right? Mm-hmm. But going to the price thing, I agree 1,000%. So I read a book. Are you guys familiar with Alex or Layla Hormozi?
No.
If you don't, if there's anything to take away from this podcast, you two would absolutely benefit. They're a married couple. They're entrepreneur. They're like huge entrepreneur coaches and massive business success. They've been doing it for like 15 years together, and they're great. You guys would love their content, because it's all about like working together and dividing and conquering in business. And so he wrote a book called $100 Million Offers, and it was a phenomenal book. And he talks about everything. Like the concept of the book is like, you can sell a stick for 10 grand if the packaging is good and the marketing is good. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's someone who's going to buy it, and they're going to cherish that stick forever and never feel like they got ripped off. That's the concept of that. Right. And so the idea was like how to structure your websites, your pricing, your packages, your marketing to lead people to buy what you want them to buy versus the lowest price. And something I really stuck with us was, he was like, just know real quick, human psychology. There will be people, and there's a lot of them, who will always buy the lowest price you have, because that is who they believe that they are. Yep. And on the other side, there will always be people that have to buy the most expensive thing you have, because that is who they believe that they are. And I was like, oh yeah, right. But so we did something that he suggested, and it's just funny how it worked out. We created this thing called a price anchor. And the price anchor on the website is, you make a package that's basically absurdly overpriced and includes way too much because you want that to be a price shock. And that's the first thing you see. And so then the next thing you see is what you actually want them to buy. And you go, wait, if that's that much and that, oh, that's clearly the better value. You with me? And so it's like the middle priced option. For us, it's like our second one in. And it's called our Fly package. It's $750 and it includes everything, photo, video, and 5 different social media versions. It's very inclusive. And so we made that like very value package. And so we're like, we only created the price anchor option because we're like, hey, this is just a price shock. Now we are selling those on the weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never even thought we were going to sell one. And it's like, teleport. And I'm laughing. I'm looking at our operations. And I'm like, how is this happening? And she's like, that's just who they are. She's like, they see the number one. I want the cream of the crop. And it is a value. It's just, it's a little bit overkill for marketing, but it's kind of not. It's like, they're like, hey, no, I want it. I want the premium marketing. I want the full community tour and I want to be on camera and I want to speak the whole thing. So that there is true. Like when you're going after the clientele that pays the lowest, it doesn't help anyone because this is what price competing does. If you have a staging company, I'll use that as an example. You have, like let's call it A/B staging. And they're competing with Step by Stage. So they come into the business and they start saying, hey guys, we'll do it, but we'll do it for half the price.
Exactly.
You're going to have people that are going to say, yeah, you probably would. Okay, great. And they're in that moment, in that month, sure, I will. I'm not too egotistical to think that I have clients that adore us so much they wouldn't go for half price in instances. Of course they would, depending on what that month is like for them. So that company is going to do it for a while. It takes manpower, just like our business. You have to have a person. This is not an internet business. There's a person doing it. So after a while, they will hit burnout. We're like, hey, I'm working too much for too little money because you drove the price to the bottom. And so they build a relationship with this other business, and the other business hits burnout, and then they end up leaving, going to their career. And so now they've also burnt the relationship with the previous company because they feel like, yo, you betrayed us and you bounced. So now we're a little bit too busy for you. We're not going to let you back in. So it only hurts when price competing happens.
It does.
That's right.
Same thing with photography. If you say, hey, so-and-so does photos for $150, cool. How long are they going to be around doing that? Like at the end of it, and different, even further is like, what is their life going to be like? If they're working, if they're editing their photos, they're booking their invoices, they're shooting their photos, and they're doing it for that cheap, that's going to put them in a certain financial category that they're not able to pour into self-development, learning, staying on top of the marketing, having money to buy new equipment when the gear changes, buy that new drone that gets better pictures. They're not able to do any of that. And so after a couple of years, you've spent all that time building a relationship with someone who's not going to be around.
Well, and I think also a lot of, clients, they may not even understand that there's a way we come up with our pricing, right? It's not like we just say, oh, it's this price because we want it to be that price. Like we do our numbers on a monthly basis to see where we're at, what we're doing, how we're growing. And we know our numbers. We're one of the only staging companies that can spit out numbers like this because it is a numbers game. It's a business, right? So I think that if you can always be ahead of like where you need to charge, what you need to do to keep your business operating, people are understanding that it's like, we still offer a very valuable price, but we're never going to be the cheapest stager in town. And I don't want to be because my work's going to suffer. And I'm not willing for my work to suffer. I want an amazing product for everybody.
And that's why it's important to understand your barriers of entry when you get into a business, right? It's important to do a little bit of market research and some type of analytics. Understand that whatever business you want to join into. So, for example, let's use our business in staging. It's very difficult to jump into a staging business and not having a lot of training or design experience or any type of knowledge or type of finances to back it up. And I think that's a lot of problems with. There's a statistic that's tracked by the Real Estate Staging Association that 50% of staging companies will fail or sell off in their first 5 years of business. And why is that? And that's a lot of businesses to fail in only 5 years. I'm like, that's a lot of wasted time and effort. And I think it's because a lot of people don't necessarily understand the barriers of entry necessary for professional home staging. How you start a staging company today is incredibly different to how you would have started one 10 years ago. The expectation is different from clients. The inventory is different. The buying process is different. The marketing process is different. Things have changed so much. I mean, 10 years ago, we were dealing with like iPhone 4s, iPhone 3s. I'm like, who still has that? I mean, you have to be able to move on and have a higher skill set, and barrier of entry make a big, big difference. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why some people do kind of fall off to the wayside or sell off. In addition to that, we always like to say, avoid the pigeonhole effect in our industry. What do I mean by that? By, newer companies pigeonholing themselves with pricing because they're the lowest price option, trying to kind of steal away or convince away other clients from other, stages in the area or in the country and state to be able to come to them and do what they do. And then over time, as they have to acquire additional, variable and fixed assets, warehouse space, additional, labor, trucks, additional inventory, additional insurances like workers' compensation, general liability insurance, all these things add up. And when that becomes a problem and they don't understand necessarily how to run a business, they just kind of got into it for the design element. That business tends to fail when they have to raise prices to compete. They're now competing with the upper echelon of stagers in the area, but the quality drops and the design drops. So they ultimately, phase out because they just didn't understand how to do it in the first place. And we see that in our industry a lot.
Yeah, I agree. It's something like I think we're starting to make a dent in it, and it's everything, like the way we can do it. What we're doing here, we're podcasting, we're putting some educational content out, people can see it. It's something we do, educate clients a lot, teaching these events, and just also like letting people get exposed to how entrepreneurs do grow their businesses. And sometimes it's just them going, wait, who am I? Like, what kind of a spender am I? Like, how do I operate? Because I think the theme of all this you're probably hearing is I do believe that the energy that we give out is what we get back 1000%. And it's so real. And some people, and I hear this a lot, people will talk about like manifesting, law of attraction a lot, but they seem to only talk about manifesting things that they wanted. But it's like, bro, when that bad thing happened, you manifested that too. So it's just like knowing where your thoughts are at, knowing what you're thinking about and what you're going to. So it's sometimes I think is people realizing, like confronting them going, hey, this is how I make my decisions. And I get on my social media and I talk about how I spend, how I advertise, hoping that some of these agents will see it and they'll go, yeah, I'm going to operate like that too, because clearly it's doing good for him. Right. And just the exposure to the influence, like we're in a very lucky generation now versus our parents' generation. We have mentors to follow. You don't need to have a mentor in person. My dad had a mentor. He had to have that mentor. He had to meet him and go meet with him,
Yeah.
And it's like, now you can just follow like the Hormozis, like I was telling you. I mean, they're phenomenal mentors for millions of people because they can see how they operate. So it's changing, and not everyone's going to succeed. And everyone's going to make a lot of money in the business, in real estate, or in any entrepreneur gig, because they just don't operate that way. And a lot of it comes down from the fear of spending. So the more people can understand that, something big changes in you when you spend freely and you do take a little risk. I felt it myself many times. Like I said, I'll spend a lot of money on something and I immediately am happy. Like I just bought myself something, which I did, bought myself business growth. But it's sometimes like at first I'm like, oh, this is going to be, and then I'll spend it. I'm like, whoo, and I feel good. And then suddenly I notice the rest of that day / next day, I'm taking different action. I'm taking the action of a confident, empowered entrepreneur, making calls in a different way, walking differently, shaking hands with better eye contact. And like, no, man, like this is what I do. And I heard this, that I was out running this morning and I heard a podcast or a motivational clip, and someone was like, hey, when you invest a certain amount in your business and when you scrap and you fight for it, it's a cold day in hell before you let someone take it from you. Exactly. You're a little bit more committed to it. You're willing to do a little bit more, So it's like the best thing we can do is just continue to educate our clients and doing good work and building that long-term rapport. So for you guys, is it just continue to scale? Like, what is the plan? Do you just continue to scale this thing, and do you want to go to different locations? Or do you want to just kind of continue to dominate the Central Florida corridor?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of looking at options right now. We've been looking at options for about 6 months now. So we have some things that possible for like the Hillsborough area and Pinellas, of maybe getting another location over there.
Cool. Oh no!
Adding a team over there. It's just
it froze for this one.
Of figuring it out. But I think we're at that point where that's where we're headed. So we'll see.
I love it. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's cool to see you guys keep crushing the content, keep doing exactly what you're doing from one profession to another. I see it, and I think we need more of it. I think we could use more from Step by Stage, and the couple of videos that I've seen have been great. Even when you two are on, just talking back and forth and talk what people can do. So.
Yeah, it's all about educating, like you're saying. I mean, we just have to constantly get out there and just share our life with people, because I think if we're not open and they don't understand staging, they're not going to use us. So if they understand like the back end of it, the front end of it, we're not intimidating, like all of that. I think that it's going to be a more joyful experience for them.
That's a good point. And I think that's something that's so true. I'm not how you guys do the sales process or how you guys do it, but that was a big game changer for our business, where I am very self-aware. Like I don't know if you guys know my previous background or what I did before, but I was a fighter. So my entire life has been competitive martial arts. So you take like a hyper aggressive, testosterone driven, like alpha male, and you put me in this sales setting, it was great for certain people, but certain people can be way too much for. And so I learned that quickly, like about a little over a year ago. I hired an operations director, and I'm like, hey, you're talking to all the clients. Like, I'll run this business, but like without even meaning to, I could hurt someone's feeling on a phone call. And I would be so frustrated because I'm like, if I'm meaning to hurt your feelings, it's one thing. But if it was unintentional, I'm like, gosh, like that's just how I speak. That's just how I am. So I learned that, like we said, not intimidating. So it's like, maybe I don't know if that's how you guys operate it or what Patrick's personality is like. But I can tell you, like, if you're presenting, it's probably a little bit more honey for all the flies to catch, than like.
So we also, especially when realtors call us, they're like, okay, I have this client. They kind of explain their personalities to us, what their trigger points are. And then I'm like, okay, this is what.
Patrick, you're up, right?
Or if it's something that's like, okay, it's more about design, it's more about those elements, it's a little bit more of like a process, then it's me that goes on them. So we can kind of figure out who's going to be the better fit for that client. So again, we're relating to them appropriately.
Yeah, being self-aware helps. Just knowing what your strengths are. For a while, I was like, no, it's just my business. I'm like, no, dude, like I'm really good at the things that I do really well, but let me just like start outsourcing the things that I don't want to do. When someone calls in and they can't figure out how to do something. Yeah, just like, hey, she can talk to them all sweetly and walk them through the process and patient. And I'm like, I know in a million years I would never be able to do that. So it's so good to have that. But guys,
having the right people on your team is crazy important.
Where can everyone find you guys at if they want to follow you?
Yeah, so you can find us on our website, stepbystageinteriors.com. Social media, Step by Stage on Instagram, Facebook. We're on TikTok, all of those. So YouTube.
Step by Stage, guys. Go check them out. Guys, it's been a pleasure to hear from you a little bit. And we're going to end our recording now.
Thank you so much.
Thanks once again.